Hello, my name is Danielle Lipe, and in this session, I will discuss what makes a source reliable for use, and I will also introduce how to properly search for, evaluate, and use reliable resources for research papers, projects, and general knowledge. And because Wikipedia is such a popular source to use and gain knowledge from, I will also cover how to appropriately use Wikipedia as a starting point for finding reliable sources. At the end of the session, 85% of students will be able to identify reliable sources for use in research papers and/or projects and analyze each source to ensure that it is accurate and appropriate for use. And 85% of students will be able to apply these skills through independent practice and will explain their justification for why the sources found are credible. So you'll probably have a lot of questions about fake news. What is it? How can we tell it's fake? How do we even know that the real news isn't fake? Well, let's talk about that. So, what is fake news? We hear about it on social media, the news, and every other conversation. Fake news is considered to be information that is fabricated, made up, or false. There are usually two types of fake news that we hear about the most, misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is information that is false, mistaken, or misleading. Usually, this information is shared by someone who doesn't realize that it's fake. When they spread it, they usually have the assumption that it's real. The second type of fake news is called disinformation. It is usually spread on purpose in order to deceive or confuse people. People who spread this type of disinformation are usually trying to agitate our emotional state. How do we know it's fake? One of the best ways to tell if a source is fake is by evaluating it using a fact-checking tool. One of my favorites to use is the CRAP test, which was developed by librarians at California State University, Chico. The first one that you look at is currency. Ask yourself, when was it published or posted? A great example of this could be a photograph on social media that you see circulating right now, but in reality, that photo was actually taken and posted a few years ago, but it's making the rounds again. The second one is relevance. Does the information relate to your topic and answer your questions? Who's the intended audience? Is the level of information appropriate? Would you be comfortable citing this source? The third is authority. You'll be looking at the author or publisher. You'll ask yourself, what are the author's credentials? Are they qualified to write on this topic? Is there contact information for the author? What about the URL? Does the site end in .edu, .org, .gov? Those are going to be usually the more reliable sources. And the fourth is accuracy. Where is the information coming from? Is it supported by evidence? Has the information been reviewed? Can you verify the information in another source or from your own personal knowledge? Try using fact-checking websites such as Snopes.com or PolitiFact.com. The last one is purpose. What is the reason for the information? Is it to inform us, to teach us, to sell something, to entertain, to persuade? Does the author make their purpose clear? Is the information fact, opinion, or propaganda? Does the information the author writes seem biased or one-sided? So just when evaluating a source, asking yourself these questions will help you determine its credibility. Besides using evaluation tools like the CRAP test, there are just other things to look out for that are going to indicate whether a source is reliable or not. So in this short video made by Common Sense Media, it's going to introduce you to some of the things that you can look out for when looking through websites and articles online.
Knowing what's going on in the world is awesome, but reading the news online can be tricky. What you see can be distracting, confusing, or even completely false. So if you're reading a news article online, it's important to know your way around. The URL is a one-of-a-kind address for every web page. Always double-check to make sure you're actually on the page you're looking for. Headlines tell us what the story is all about, but sometimes they can exaggerate or say something different from the article to get you to click on them. Most news sites have different sections to tell you what type of article you are reading. If you want the facts, just be sure you're not on an opinion article. The byline is the writer's name, and the date is when it was published. No byline, no date? The article might not be trustworthy. Images or videos help introduce the story and show details that words can't. But pictures that seem too crazy to be true or ads before a video could be misleading. Related articles can be useful, but keep an eye out for pieces that don't report just the news. Sponsored content is links to things on other websites, but watch out for clickbait, Don't let shocking headlines or wild images trick you into clicking. Advertisements link to other websites that are usually selling something, but some ads are disguised to look like news. The comment section has thoughts and opinions from readers, but remember that anyone can post just about anything there, even if it's mean or completely untrue. It's a lot to keep in mind, but if you know what to look for and what to look out for, you'll be the first to get the story.
All right, so in this next section, we're going to be going over many of those same characteristics that the video mentioned, but we're going to be slowing it down and kind of focusing on what to look for and how to apply parts of the CRAP test for further evaluation. The first one is a headline. A headline is a title of the article and should give the reader an idea of what the article is about. The headline is usually found at the top of the article in big, bolded words. A good headline should not be, should be factual and should not be misleading. The byline is the part of the article that tells you who the author is. The byline can usually be found underneath the headline, and it starts with the word by. This is where using the authority part of the CRAP test would work. And there's also the URL, the web address. It's a unique address specific to that web page. You can share this with others, and it'll take them to the exact page you are on. The URL is found at the top of the web browser in the address bar. When looking at the URL, you can evaluate it using the authority part of the CRAP test as well. The section title is the category that the article is featured in. The section title can usually be found at the top of the website. The image or video usually helps to introduce the topic and gives information that words sometimes can't. The image can usually be found at the beginning of the article, underneath the heading and byline. Using the CRAP test when looking at the picture is also going to help you determine the overall credibility of the article. I have personally seen I've personally seen articles that use older pictures in their articles, and that was an indication that this is probably not a legitimate article. The date is going to be the exact day, month, and year that the article was published, or even updated, and it can usually be found underneath the headline. That can usually be a good indication of how recent the article was written, but be very careful. I've seen fake articles created where every time you click on it, no matter the day, it always showed the current date, and so it was created that way to deceive you. The related articles is other articles written by the same news agency or website. It may be similar to the current article you're reading. Just be careful. This section sometimes can include opinion pieces written by guest essayists who are not actually employed by the news organization, and they may not be a reliable source. There's also sponsored content or paid content. It can look like a link to another article, but it is not. It's usually a link to another website that has paid to have that spot. Sponsored content can be found throughout the website. It's usually labeled with paid content or sponsored content. The area can be, or since it can look official, just be very careful on those sites. There are many tools that are available to you when evaluating your sources. Today I discussed how to apply the CRAP test to your potential sources, but there are a few others that you could use as well. Here are a few. Each one is useful in particular instances. The radar test is very similar to the CRAP test. The DIG method helps students analyze and interpret images found online, and the trifecta checkup was designed to be used to evaluate bar charts, pie charts, and other graphs. Just a few things to remember: never cite or use a resource without properly evaluating it. When we just take a source at face value without properly vetting it, we may not be getting a credible source at all. Use the CRAP test to evaluate your sources. Sometimes we cannot apply every part to a source, but check as many as you can before committing to using it. And don't rely on just one part of the test, but most of them, if not all of them. All right, so now I'd like to show you what it looks like when these methods are applied to sources cited in a Wikipedia article. This will be especially useful for all of you when you have research papers or projects, and since Wikipedia is a very popular source of information. Wikipedia is a fantastic online resource for research. However, there are a few issues that you need to be aware of. to use it safely in your own research. It is not always reliable because the articles can be edited by anyone on the internet. Allowing anyone to update an article helps keep the articles up to date, but there is a lack of quality control. It is impossible to monitor every change to every article on Wikipedia to ensure that every update is factual or accurate. So just be careful about that. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate how to apply these methods to a Wikipedia article. So let's go here and go to google.com, and we're going to look at George Washington, first US president. And when you go there, you'll notice Wikipedia is the first that pops up there. So we're going to click on that. So that's why it's a pretty popular one. I mean, it's like the first thing that pops up when you Google almost anything. If you look here, there's a lot of like blue. Those are links to other Wikipedia pages about that specific subject. So if you want to know a little bit more about Continental Congress or the Continental Army, you can go there and it'll actually take you to a different Wikipedia page about that specific subject. And then there are photographs throughout the Wikipedia page as well. So if we click on them, you'll see that it is also linked to the source where they got it from. So in this case, this one links to the Clark Museum. So the person who added this photograph to the Wikipedia page got it from here. And if you notice, it looks pretty legitimate. It does give a lot of information about the art itself. It is from, again, a museum. It does have .edu, so it's probably a pretty credible source. If we return back to the Wikipedia page and we look down here in the bibliographic information, you'll just see a whole bunch of information about George Washington. And then if you look, there is a superscript next to this date right here. This is a cited source. So the person who put this information here, this is where they retrieved it from. It'll tell you what day they retrieved it on, where they retrieved it from, and if you click on it, it'll actually take you there. So this actually came from the Library of Congress, and which is a very high government organization, so it's probably going to be pretty reliable. They do end in .gov, and they do have lots of other information. So here's an introduction to kind of George Washington and his and the Continental Congress that he was in, and then there's a digital collections that you can look at. So there, and those are links, so you can look at journals. These are primary source materials that are associated with Washington, so you could always look at those. There are also external websites that have been evaluated by the Library of Congress themselves, so these are going to be very trustworthy websites to get some information from. So like if you click on Continental Army, it'll take you to mountvernon.org, so there's the URL and some information about George Washington and the Continental Army. Here is the author right here. It tells you that they have a PhD, so they probably are very they're able to write something like this. It also gives you their bibliography, where they got their sources from, their information from. So they do cite all of that stuff for us. And then if we go back here, there's also print sources in the Library of Congress. So these are books where you could also get even more information about George Washington and the Continental Army. There gives you the call number, the title, and things like that. And it separates it also by just readers and then young readers. So if you know a child that needs to do some of this types of research, here are some books that are appropriate for them. If we go back to the Wikipedia page, I do want to show you right quick the View History tab. This is where you can see all the revisions that have been made to this page specifically. So if you look, these have all been just in April, the month of April, and it tells you who did it, and sometimes they'll even put here what it was that they were revising or fixing in the Wikipedia page. So this just kind of goes to show that anybody can do revisions, and so that's why it's not always smart to be trusting in what you see directly on Wikipedia, and you should actually go and look at the sources where they got that information from. All right, let's go back here, and it is going to be your turn. I want you to choose a topic from the list provided, and you're going to go and you're going to search Wikipedia for that topic. You're going to find a source or several sources and then kind of decide on one. And you're going to use the evaluation tool and determine if that source is credible. You'll fill out the Google form that I have shared with you. You're going to include a link to the source, and then you're going to give me some justification as to why you believe that source is credible.